Why again are we watching this movie?
No, it's good. I would seriously recommend film number 1, at least the first half.
Yes.
So, Anne of Green Gables.
1934.
Starring Anne Shirley as Anne Shirley.
Who was not named Anne Shirley when she was born. She changed her name as Anne Shirley.
Yes, and it looks like she may have done that because she was a child actress and she was 16 at this point. And
15.
this... 15?
15. She is 15 and she plays 15.
Well, she plays 11 through 16.
No, she plays 15.
Yes.
But they're trying to...
But there's actual time goes on.
Yeah, but they're trying to obfuscate the passage of time, and they're making her the entire time the same age except for the later period.
Yeah. Okay, that's probably... Yeah, I was still going with... She's 11 because she's 11. No. That's where the story starts. Everybody knows this. It's like world-renowned.
She is 15 and they realize it. They realize something else. And I have that on my thingy. She's too pretty.
Yep.
And
she's always too pretty.
And
the 1980s version was also...
She has a better reason to be too pretty. Mm-hmm. In 1934, in Hollywood, if a child, maybe, if it's a child like 5 or 6 years old, but 15, she's not a child anymore, and they realize that's what they're trying not. They're not really trying to make her 11 anymore, because she is 15. She is a young lady, and
she's not a Shirley Temple.
And even as a child, the cult of pretty in the 19th century, and the story is actually set in... Anne is actually born officially 1865.
65.
I have it down because I looked it up. 1865, so she is 10-15 years later. It's 10-15 years later. It's 1875. The point is, in that time, the cult of the pretty child, it is horrendous, because people were writing stories about children who were ugly, who do not deserve to live. It was that bad.
Little Lord Fauntleroy had that in it.
And that's even later. It's
constantly remind you how angelically pretty he is.
Yes. Yeah. And because the cult of the pretty child is why
Lucy Maud
Montgomery made her not pretty, to try and do something about that.
Very homely, skinny.
But even so, in 1934, they're still falling victim to the Hollywood trope of everybody is pretty. And that they don't want to show in 34, which is the height of the Depression, is a sad child, a dilapidated child. They don't want to show.
The whole thing is about poverty when you think about it.
And that's the other gripe I have with this movie. It is way too charming. Yeah. It's way too flowery. I mean, I put flowers on my thingy because it's
put the ruffles on and everything.
Put the ruffles on because it is so flowery, and they.
But it's, if you compare it to the 1980s version, it's not even that flowery, because in the 1930s they thought this was kind of nice. We look at it now and going, there's actually some real poverty things in there. Like when the two girls are stamping that, which I think is laundry. They're stamping the laundry outside. That's just what the girls are doing outside when they're home. Because in 34... you wouldn't see that in the 1980s version.
In 34, people did know what poverty was. So they're going to... If you're going to say poverty, you're going to go to show it, but in a prettified manner. Whereas in the 1980s, people have forgotten what poverty is.
But also
and
in
so
the
they're
1930s...
doing a rendition of what they think poverty is. The 1930s, they know.
Yes.
They know.
They have no problem understanding what poverty is. They also are all sorts of stuff, pre-plastic, pre-whatever. So when Marilla makes a basket of food for them to go on the train, she takes a piece of cake and she puts it in a piece of cloth. She wraps that and that goes in the box. You never see them do that in modern stuff that is set back then. Yeah. It's set in the late 1800s.
The best thing people would do now is wrap it in paper and then put it in the...
I'm sure that in the 30s they knew what they did in the 1890s. And they wrapped it in cloth.
Yeah. And another thing that I noticed about this movie, and it's for the next one as well, but for this one, it's not set in 1870s. It's set in 1910.
It never is.
But it's
always my gripe about all the renditions.
It is 1910.
Yeah.
From what you can see and what people wear, what the little kids wear, what the grown-ups wear, and it's 1910 when she's the 15 years that she is, but in the other movie, still 1910. It is so it's a fixed time, and it's a choice. I think I understand this choice, because one of the things about 1934 versus 1910 is that it is within people's memory, whereas 1870s is not. So it harks on more of a familiarness.
Yeah, it's like people's youth. You know, what my grandmother's house looked like. And in
1910, people were also very, very poor, so it fits. So I have no gripe with that at all. I like that.
Yeah, that was well done.
It's a choice. It's a choice that you can work with, I think.
Yeah. So they're basically saying Anne is constantly the same age. It's set constantly in the same time, but Anne has to progress, because that is the story, and Marilla has to progress, and Matthew kind of has to, but doesn't really have to. But it's Anne and Marilla. I thought the actress who played Marilla was awesome. She had a bad reputation in Hollywood because she was a very willful person, and I'm like, don't they always say that about actresses?
If you as a woman, you don't put yourself out there, people are gonna waltz all over you. So
she was a bitch because forget it.
She said her mind.
She probably knew what she was doing. She did it right. She was very good in all the other films that were like listed. And apparently she was known. I mean, she dies fairly quickly after this, the actress herself, but she was known for this movie Best.
She died. I looked her up. I looked her up. I looked Matthew up as well. She actually dies 2 years after the second movie, but
after the second movie. Okay, yeah.
I assume she's not in the second movie, and I assume it's because she may have been
She may have been quite
retired.
Old, but also they put Gilbert into the second movie, which he really isn't in the book. It doesn't have to be, but on the other hand, everybody wants to see that love story with Anne and Gilbert. That is going to be the always going to end well love story that everybody's counting on.
Yeah, and so let's go straight to the let's include the second movie as well. The big problem with the second movie is that in the first movie, Matthew is so charming and nice, and you would want to see him in the second movie. However, the actor died in 1936.
Yes, and I really tried, because he doesn't actually die as the character. They kept him alive at the end of the movie.
Yeah, but
and so
that's 1934. They had no idea that he was going to die in 2 years.
And also, if you think about it, it's the Great Depression. Everybody's going to the movies to get away from it all. So you soon have to not talk about how horrible Anne's background is. They get away from that really quickly.
Indeed, the gripe that one should have with the 1934 movie is that they do like maybe this much of the story. They do the charming part.
They do
the charming part.
They hit all the really cool bits that are just like boom, boom, boom.
But
and
the
then
charming
they
part
just depart.
The charming part of the movie, and that is why it's worth seeing, is just the interplay of Anne with Matthew and Marilla.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all the other things that should be there, like Diana, you lose it.
No.
And even Gilbert, I don't particularly see the chemistry between the Gilbert and Anne.
This is what I felt about Gilbert, is that he is more of a rascally boy, which he's angelic in all the other versions. He's kind of angelic in the book as well, because he's a non-entity. He is not a problem, other than that what Anne's projecting on him, and that she's hurt, and then she's in competition with him. But that's really, it's all in Anne's head. But in this one, he is no, exactly. In this one, and she actually has this line like, "You're a character," and he's like, "What does that mean?" And then we get a little bit of what goes on in her brain about, seeing the world as a writer. And I felt both movies really did not showcase the aspirations that Anne has to become a writer. Especially the second movie completely doesn't talk about it at all.
The second movie is a mess. It's a big mess.
Yes.
What was nice about the first movie, like I said, was Marilla, Matthew, and Anne. But they don't have Marilla and Matthew for the second movie, so what are you going to do? So they actually splice in another older man character, played by everybody's favorite Angel. Who is actually specialized in playing this kind of roles. It's one of his later roles, as is the actual Angel. And he is trying to take over the Matthew part. The problem is that he's actually, as far as I can tell, a completely original character to this movie. It's not in the book.
It's in Rilla of Ingleside. There is a character like that. He is the lighthouse owner, and I think that they're trying to do that.
Oh God!
Because he is the lovely, wonderful guy who lives at the water, and she always goes to for some really good conversation. The nice thing about the second movie is that she's an adult.
Yes, and they actually acknowledge, because it is 6 years later, and so that means that Anne Shirley, who was 15 in the first one, cannot be 15 again in the second one. She grew up.
But she's only like 22.
Okay, but she's now grown up, and I think the reason, one of the practical reasons why they picked this one is because that book just came out, and apparently Hollywood jumped on it and just got the rights to it.
They got the rights, but they also. They did the whole Pringle stuff, which you have to do, and that's, I think, the strength of that book. But I feel that Anne's role in it was not strong, because she, especially in the second, the sequel of the 1980s version, they do the whole Pringle thing as well. And there Anne is strong. You can see how she asserts herself by not being as bitchy as everybody else is being, and being herself. But here, she literally stands there in a house full of Pringles. These are the bad, the local family, the story family that owns everything.
The story is, if you don't know it, is that when after. I assume that you do know the story of Anne, but after she leaves Gables to go into teaching. She goes into teaching and ends up at a girls' school in Pringle.
After her university degree.
Yeah.
So she's taken a job as the head of, sort of the head of the school. But then as she arrives, she doesn't actually get the job. She gets told what to do. She gets ousted by everybody.
But it's politics. The point is, what I'm trying to say is that the story is about her in a new location with a bunch of new people, and that is the problem with this movie, is that it's all new people, and we don't get Marilla and Matthew. We get hopefully a good plot.
But where I was going, when she's standing in a house full of these Pringles, she actually says to them, I can always make people like me. Why don't you like me? What? And like, that is not strong. That is a girl begging. Anne didn't beg, not even when she went to Marilla. Well, she begged to stay with Marilla when she was a child. Yeah. But when Rachel Lynn called her red hair and all that red-headed whatever, and she said, I would rather go back to the orphanage than apologize to Rachel Lynn. That is strong. It may have been the wrong decision, whatever, but she's 11. But at 22... I don't see Anne standing there and begging people, and that really they lost me at that point. Then they did another thing, which was the play that she is responsible for to put on with the girls.
With the girls in the school.
This is a co-ed school, and for whatever reason, but it was a girls' school. Yeah, this girl is a school. Yeah, I don't know why there's boys
because
there.
It's 1910, 10 versus 1880s.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And so the play was supposed to be Mary, Queen of Scots, which is a big storyline in every version that we've seen. And here they do Cinderella. Again, you lose me there.
Yeah.
Because why Cinderella? That is just so role affirming. Not, and that's why.
And the problem...
That's why, because it's Hays Code right there. The Hays Code...
Oh, they could do
this
Queen of
is
Scots,
34, and the Hays Code went into effect in 40. Sorry, this is 40. Yes, the first movie is already within Hays Code.
Yes. The difference between 34 and 40 is humongous.
Massive. You can even see it in these two movies.
In the first one I have on my paper, the first one that you notice in 34 is that the sound is not great. The microphones are not wonderful. You have to keep that in mind. The way they put in music is not wonderful yet. But when you get to 19... And the quality of the actual visual material is not... It can be good, but this one wasn't. When you get to 1940, the sound is good, the film quality is good, the music is good. Now you're starting to see that the writing is bad. Whereas in the original, they realized their limitations. They realized they didn't have enough time to do all the stories, so they picked the stories they thought were most important, which was the Marilla, Matthew, Anne story, and then showcase that. Whereas the 1940 version just does higgledy-piggledy stuff all over the place and nothing properly. And that's a problem. And in 1940, there is a lot of other good movies that are going to completely bowl them out of the box office.
Yeah,
easily.
I mean, we've just had Gone with the Wind, and that was also set back in time, so it would not.
So in competition, the 34 movie is also not good compared to modern movies or compared to a 1940 movie, but. Yeah. The 1940 movie compared to other 1940 movies loses big time on all of it.
The same year comes out Grapes of Wrath, which is also about poverty. It's also about the Great Depression, which this isn't about the Great Depression because the first movie is supposed to be about poverty and how to overcome it and how to work together. But Windy Poplars is just Windy Poplars. It is just and this is what the at the time was in the newspaper saying it's just a piece of fluff.
Yeah,
there's nothing to it. I mean, the actors are doing their best. Cinematography is doing their best. Although I actually found the first one cinematography more interesting because they were nice on the people. It's like when they got like in Green Gables, they just made the camera made it feel really cozy and small.
They realized realized a little bit more of what they're supposed to be doing. Whereas Windy Poplars has no idea and just does all subtle.
And it doesn't need to be that the story could have been tighter. They pushed in the story about the little girl Betty that is then dying, which is really the story of Minnie May, who had the croup, and then Anne had to get. Anyone who's seen the 1980s version knows this. Anne has to go get the
doctor because the mother doesn't want to.
Yeah, Matthew goes to get the doctor. The parents weren't at home. Matthew goes get the doctor, and Anne has to keep the kid alive for the night together with Diana. Yeah. Now that's a heroic story.
Yeah, but
and they didn't do it in the first movie, so they wanted to push that into here.
And
that's how they got Gilbert in the story because he's a doctor.
But here they make it a bad guy story of a adoptive mother of all bloody things who is neglecting their adopted child, because that's what it was.
Yeah, it was not adopted. It was like there was a child left over somewhere in the family.
Okay, but it wasn't her.
So
it wasn't her child. No. It was not her physical child. It was somebody else's. Yeah. And this was already the second adoption in this in Pringle story, and so that you get this build up of something, and then it peters out to nothing.
Yeah. And the Pringle stuff is actually really interesting. In the books and several of the short stories, there are these really cantankerous old ladies that then you find out, once you get to know them better, so much has happened to them that they became this. Yep. And that's what is the strength of Lucy Maud Montgomery's writing. In this film, the old lady, Hester, she ends up falling down the staircase after being cranky about the kid being sick. She falls down the staircase with a lit lamp. And
it
that burns the
down.
house down.
Yeah, and I had to.
And there's another piece where I say this movie loses me, and some other versions of Anne of Green Gables, like the continuing story, as much as I love that production as a whole, the Sullivan production, but is the moment they make Anne an action hero.
Yeah.
Please do not do that.
Yeah,
it is not about being an action hero.
It's not about being or Gilbert or anybody else. They're not about being action heroes.
We don't need fires in.
And the fire, I had to look it up because I was going, oh my god, that's Mandalay in flames. I had to look it up.
What's Mandalay?
From Rebecca. That ends in that's also 1940. I had to look it up. This one
1940.
Yeah, this one was already being made, but everybody read the book. So everybody read the book of Rebecca, and they wanted a fire at the end, and that's why there's a fire at the end. So we have a Matthew substitute because we need a Matthew, and we have a fire because of Rebecca.
Yeah.
And you're murdering your own movie by getting in these things that don't belong in it.
And we could have had a Marilla substitute in Katherine, the other school teacher that
she could have been
slighted.
older. Yeah, she could have been.
One, she could have been older. Two, in the Sullivan version, I don't know if it's true in the book as well, but in the Sullivan version, this was a cranky, older, not older, but certainly older than Anne, like 10 years older than Anne, and she had missed all her chances because she was also an orphan, and she had worked her whole life really hard, and she was not a Pringle. And the moment they introduced this character as a Pringle, it was like, okay, well, now you've lost that, because she has nothing, she's protected by the family. She has nothing to fight against. And so all she is worried about is that Anne's taking over her prestigious stuff. And Anne comes in, can we do it together? And that if you, please just watch the sequel of the 1980s version.
It's at least
much
better
than this. Yeah. And everything else is in there, including the girl that needed mothering and everything. And that they take the little girl at the end of the movie and said, we're going to adopt you, she and Gilbert. I'm like, no, stop.
She's not available for adoption.
The little girl, little girl.
They're not a stray dog. People are not stray dogs you can pick up. No. But the thing is, by that time you've lost it with the fire and all the stuff. You've lost it already. Yeah. And the thing that I find is sad is that Anne Shirley, who plays it, who changed her name to Anne Shirley, basically this killed her career. The second movie killed her career.
Yeah, she stops being an actress pretty soon after that. She gets married like 3 times and something, and then she has children. In the 40s and 50s, people just stopped working when they got married.
And she's very nice actress. She's just not.
She's a good actress.
She's good, but she's not brilliant or anything. She's
good.
She was in the director in the first one had her with the lady who plays Marilla and the guy who plays Matthew, who are very much consummate actors.
Sparkles.
Yeah, they are consummate actors. So between the good director, some good co-players, she can do a really good performance. But you have to give her something. And this second movie, it ain't it. And they gave her nothing.
And it's not the actors. All the actors are doing a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And I want to come back to her name change because she was a child actress. And she may have wanted to make a break with what her mother, because there was a mother thing, like a helicopter mother thing. I know nothing, but fine. Okay.
There may have been a minute, like a
she wanted to say, okay, all the stuff that she did before is a different career. Now she was 15, 16. She wanted to have her own career. And I could see that because nobody remembers her for anything that happened before that. It would have been silent movies. It would have been, it's
34 because she's only 15. In 34, you have 4 years to do talkies.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I'm gonna look her up and see what the problem was, but it's I do remember that I looked up her name and I was going, okay, that's not a great name anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't a problem, but it was.
No, it wasn't great though.
But I could see saying,
there may have been with her, and I'm going to look it up and I'll put it here. There may have been a monetary problem with the mother, and because the
15 is still very young.
I have to look up when the Coogan law came in effect, but I think it was a little bit earlier, but not much. I want to say Jimmy Coogan. Jimmy Coogan was a child actor who did silent movies when he was really young, and then started to age up, and then started to move on to other things, and then grew up, and then stood there with no money in his hand because his family squandered everything. And there was a lawsuit, and now there is a law, but the law is still very meh, because only a small amount of money has to be set aside. It has to be set aside in a trust fund for the kid when they grow up, but it's like 15% or something like that.
The problem is child labor.
So she might have had a child labor problem with her mother.
Yeah.
And then she had to get emancipated, because that's usually the way it goes.
Yeah.
And then you change your name,
and
because
you're 15 and you rage change your name. I would do that. Why not?
The Anne Shirley of 1934. Yeah, that's.
She was good.
Keep in mind that the quality of the actual material is not great, like the sound and stuff like that. But other than that,
the second half of the movie, in both movies, just basically, what I did like about the second movie is the guy who runs the heating system.
Yeah, he was fun. I think he's the other Matthew.
He's the other Matthew. Yeah, I mean, he first of all, it's fun. You actually get like the jovialness that they're trying to
a little bit naughty, yes.
Yeah. And it also tells you something about technology at the time. It really brings it home where they're at. It's like Downton Abbey-esque. Somebody is tending the heating in that school.
Otherwise you get no heating.
Yeah, yes. Somebody has to do it. And nobody nowadays thinks about you literally have to put the coals into a big, massive heating machine somewhere in a room, usually underground.
And you have to have somebody to do that, yeah.
And somebody has to sit there. And he sat there, and when he's reading that play with the kids, and he's so into whatever's happening at school. I mean, I like it.
Yeah, that is one of the things that is charming about movies from 1934, even if it's set in a little period, a little earlier, is they have more information that we have forgotten now, because it's 100 years ago, and nearly 100 years ago for 1934.
And for me, that's actually a reason, one of the many reasons that I like watching stuff like that, because it is a doorway opening into, especially when you say, okay, it's not 1940, but we're really doing something that's set in the 1910s, but really it's going to be about earlier than that. So this what they remember.
But at least they are trying to represent 1910 pretty accurately, because people remember from 1910. The older people there are going to have. We were grown up then. We knew how it went.
And
you need to go.
I also think that this movie, even if they'd done it right, and that would have been better. I'm talking about the second movie now, from 1940. If they had done it right, that would be awesome, and we would enjoy it better now. But I think they would never have stood a chance, because Gone with the Wind had just come out.
Oh yeah,
the year before, and it was in color, and it just no.
And there is and there's another 50 to 100 really good movies that year. 1940 was a good year.
Yeah. Well, Grapes of Wrath.
Grapes of Wrath, and there's if you want for costume drama, there's a Pride and Prejudice that came out the same year, which is way more charming than this one. So this one
lost money.
Of
the
course.
1940s.
Of course.
The first movie, 1934, was successful. It tripled its money.
Of course, and
RKO it had high standing, but the second movie, I think it took everybody by surprise that they couldn't continue
and because they ruined it themselves. They forgot that you have to pick out what is charming about it and do that. That's all they need to do.
The same writer or director from a producer.
Or just pick a lane. That's the thing. They just didn't pick a lane. They tried to do the entire story without picking a focal point. And you can't do that in a movie.
I will go back to Anne standing there and begging to be liked. Is they de-emancipated her. Whereas it's actually a very emancipated character.
it's kind of a detail. If
I know, but it's important to me.
I mean, they included Gilbert when he wasn't not unnecessary. If they had just picked one of the story,
okay.
if they had picked one of the storyline, picked her and Katherine as the storyline,
Yes.
the main storyline, or pick her and old Hester
Pringle,
as the storyline, as the storyline.
Or her and the little girl, if you absolutely have to.
If you have to,
Yeah.
but then do that properly.
Yeah.
Anything would have done if they'd done any of these things, because like the Rebecca film that came out, it does one story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even the Pride and Prejudice film that came out the same year, which is another book, they also reduced it to one storyline, follow one character, and stayed close to that character, because that is the way to make movies. They made a mistake in how to adapt a book to a movie.
Yeah.
They messed it up.
Yeah.
And it's their own fault.
I feel that the first movie, 1934
they got it right.
They got it right until they started doing the love story between Anne and Gilbert.
They should have
left it. And then it's basically the whole thing just falls apart into, they're in love, but there's no conflict and everybody's fine.
They should have just done young Anne and not done Gilbert to the love story. Just not done any of the stuff that's later.
Yeah. If they had known that they were going to be able to do a second movie, they might have done that.
Yeah.
But in 1934, they wanted to cram everything in that they could possibly cram into.
And it's time when sequels and stuff, they didn't do them at the time.
I felt when I was starting to watch it, because it had been easily 20 years since I'd seen it, I was like dreading how bad it would be, and I was so surprised about the sparkling of
so charming.
The first 20 or 30 minutes it jumps off the screen. It's excellent. And then,
it peters out.
Yeah.
Okay, but the 1941 is a straight miss.
Yeah. But if you're an Anne fan, you should still watch it.
Okay. I mean, it's not a cellarwood garbage or anything like that. It's just...
No.
They forgot that they're also making a movie, and they're trying to do too much in the book, in booky stuff.
And that's the problem with... or your challenge if you're doing Lucy Maud Montgomery, because she does write very episodic. It is very much short story. So there's a lot of little plots that you need to get in.
Do down this one short story.
Exactly. Make choices.
Do the one.
Preferably make the right choice.
Do one of the short story and use the other ones as background, because this is wrong. They just try to do all the short stories of the book.
I would have also liked to have seen like the Anne and Gilbert story. If you want to do Anne and Gilbert, do Anne and Gilbert.
The story is there. It is in the book. If you want to do that, just show and then put all the Pringle stuff on the background.
It's not in Windy Poplars, though. So.
Then you can grab it from the other books, but they may have had a copyright issue.
It's like that's the book.
In that case, you have the Hester Pringle, and you have the Katherine story, and you could pick one of these and go with it, and just do the story, and then you have a great drama. You get the 1940 people are watching sophisticated tea time dramas, and they could have been a sophisticated tea time drama, and now it's just nothing. It's just a quib. It goes poof and little bit of smoke.
Yes,
and also a fire.
Yes, so much disappointment was had. It just is what it is. It really will never be any more than that. Yeah. No.
So that's my opinion.
And my opinion.
And we're
sticking to it.